Hey, what is happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another Q&A. So yes, it is Q&A time once again. Yesterday on Twitter, I did put the proverbial call out to you guys to ask me a bunch of questions about whatever the heck is on your mind when it comes to gaming. I always kind of throw the caveat of like non-gaming questions in there, but really I don't get those anymore. People are really just asking me about video game stuff. They're asking about Nintendo, obviously a lot of Metroid stuff. We have some Metroid questions. The last question will be a Metroid question. And so, hey, that's just what normally happens. I don't mind. I love it. That's why I like to do these things. So they're usually pretty long. I think I only have about 10 or 11 questions today. I didn't want to pick too many. I tried to pick the best ones, of course, and I can give you guys shout outs as I answer them. To anyone who asked a question whose question I did not get to, I am sorry, but I can't answer every question in the world, so I just recommend following me on Twitter so you can kind of be a part of these conversations and Q&As and stuff in the future. And of course, I'm super active on Twitter. I mean, I'm tweeting all sorts of stuff all day, every day, literally. So it's also a great way to just kind of interact with me and converse with me and kind of just see what's going on and all of that good stuff. But with that being said, one of my favorite kinds of videos to make, a lot of great stuff to get to, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first question of the day comes from my good buddy, fellow YouTuber and fellow podcaster, Jay Fleming, who goes by Mind of Jay at Jay Fleming on Twitter. What is up, Jay? My main man, thanks so much again for asking a question, the first one of the day. He asks me, would love your thoughts on the 2019 year overall as it pertains to gaming. Now, I like this question because I will be honest, I don't think everyone will agree with me here for some reason, but I think 2019 has been pretty freaking great when it comes to gaming, you guys. Honestly, I've been shocked ever since we hit January how many great games have come out throughout the year. Obviously, being a huge Nintendo and Switch fan, I was a little disappointed in the first kind of, I guess first quarter, maybe first half of the year until about July or so, with the amount of games coming out for the Switch specifically. I mean, January did have Travis Strikes Again, which was cool to have a No More Heroes spin-off. It wasn't amazing, but it was certainly good, and I'm glad that it exists. And then it was either February or March or so that Yoshi came out, which I thought was also solid but not amazing. I think the first time something really impactful hit for me would have been around Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which was soon followed by the one and only Fire Emblem Three Houses. You know, plenty of other great games. Astral Chain, Luigi's Mansion, of course, came out throughout the year. Pokemon just came out a couple of weeks ago. So the Switch did take a while to get going, at least for me personally. But the rest of the consoles, the rest of gaming overall, still had so many great games. I mean, I've already kind of put together my top 10 games for the year list. I might shift it a little bit before I actually make the video, but it was hard because there's a lot of games that I had to leave off the list, and there's also a lot of games I didn't even have a chance to play. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, Sekiro came out this year. Resident Evil 2 came out this year. Devil May Cry 5 came out this year. Like I said, Luigi's Mansion and a Fire Emblem came out this year. Star Wars, Gears of War 5. I mean, the Code Vein, the list just goes on and on and on. I mean, Death Stranding, love it or hate it, it's a huge deal that that game actually came out this year. So it's just been completely insane. One of the best years, way better than 2018 for sure. 2017, because Nintendo was so specifically strong, that might be the better year overall. But I don't know. I think 2019 has been pretty damn great. Okay, next question comes from Who's of the Black Eagles at the Who's 85. What is up? Thanks for the question. He or she asks, says, love your Q&As. Thoughts on why Fire Emblem Three Houses was not up for Game of the Year? Now, of course, they're talking about the Game Awards, which happens in about 2 weeks from now. A lot of controversy surrounding the Game Awards. I discussed it in 2 separate videos. I even had quite a few questions about Game Awards related stuff. And I mean, you know, briefly I'll say, and I've shared my thoughts on this, overall, I understand the controversy with the Gaming Awards, and there are things I kind of don't agree with. But I'm not really, like, mad about it. Like, am I losing my mind over the stuff with the Game Awards? Not really. I'm not taking it so seriously that I need to take up space in my brain to be upset about it. Like, I have opinions. I think some things could have gone better. Obviously, too many nominations for Death Stranding. Yes, I agree with that. But overall, it's just whatever, and I'm excited to see the show. Specifically with Fire Emblem, though, I will agree with your question here. It is one of the things that I don't agree with, because Fire Emblem Three Houses is, chef's kiss perfect. That game is so good. And I am not the biggest RPG or strategy fan. I am a pretty big Fire Emblem fan, though, and so this game, first Fire Emblem on a console in a long time, is so good it hurts me inside. And it also reviewed that way. I mean, I don't know the Metacritic, but I think it's in the 90s. It's one of the highest reviewed games of the year for sure. And the game got snubbed. I think it only got the one nomination for Best Strategy Game in a category it's going to absolutely decimate. It didn't even get nominated for Best RPG, which it should have. And I would absolutely argue, trying not to be biased because I love the game, I would argue that it really deserves a nomination for Game of the Year, which is exactly what the question here is. I think it's a shame. I think it's a little bit of a misreading of the audience and the industry and the situation. The only game I think I didn't play of the Game of the Year nominations was Control, which I want to play, but seems like that wasn't the greatest game. And so it's interesting that a game like Fire Emblem or Luigi's Mansion or Gears of War 5, that Devil May Cry 5, that these games didn't get that nomination. It was very strange. But I will say, and I'll end this question here, Jeff Keighley has been trying to do the best he can to tell people, hey, everyone is accusing me of being biased. Like, I'm not on the committee. Yes, I put the show together and I host it, but I'm not a part of it. And so, the games that were nominated for Game of the Year, he's saying he had nothing to do with, then it's just, you got to blame the 80 industry committee members that made the choices. I tend to believe that. I don't really think Jeff Keighley is out there trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, because I think he knows it would hurt the integrity of his show if that ever got exposed to be true. So what's the best way to protect it from being exposed? It's to not do it. So, I don't know everything in the world, but I just tend to think that that's probably true. And for whatever reason, a lot of these people, I guess, didn't think of Fire Emblem. I don't think it's a game that really reaches a mass appeal the way they want it to, because it's so specifically Nintendo focused and strategy focused. So I guess I didn't think about it. It's a shame. I disagree with it, but it is what it is. Next question comes from Kieran A. Buckley at KA Buckley 3. And Kieran asks me, what would you like to see from Nintendo at the Game Awards? Bayonetta 3, Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel, or something completely new? Great question, because I think we can all expect something hopefully significant from Nintendo at the Game Awards in about 2 weeks. They always tend to show up there. We know we're not going to see Reggie, which is a tragedy. At least he won't be there representing Nintendo. So it's going to feel very eerie and strange not having Reggie at the show with Jeff, because they always have great banter back and forth, and Reggie was good at bringing surprises. What I would want to see is either A, something we've never seen or heard of before, or B, I would like to see the first reveal of something we've yet to actually see, right? So that to me would be either Breath of the Wild 2, like you bring up here. Yeah, we got the trailer, but we still don't know really anything about that. So maybe a little bit of an opening of the doors of that game, or something really huge like Metroid Prime 4, because we've seen nothing of that game. Now, I don't expect Metroid Prime 4 at all. So, yes, I would like to see Metroid Prime 4 or Breath of the Wild or, something else like that. I don't know, like that we haven't seen footage of, which is really nothing. No More Heroes 3, maybe. Or just something we have no idea about. What if that's when they show a Pikmin game or an F-Zero game or Retro Studios' new game, a new Star Fox? Like if they unveil something we didn't even know was confirmed to be a real thing. Even the Metroid Prime trilogy, which is just gonna hang like a noose around my neck forever until the damn thing shows up. Something like that would be really great. The Breath of the Wild thing specifically, I go back and forth on if I think it would happen for two reasons. I could see it happening because, 2 years two different shows over the last couple of years, Nintendo has spent a lot of time on Breath of the Wild. They showed the first gameplay ever in 2015, I want to say, and then I think 2017, they confirmed the DLC to release that day at the show. And so they've already done a lot of Zelda. Maybe they don't want to do it again. However, at the same time, the idea of showing something significant and confirming, a title or some gameplay or something, the way they did in 2015, could also be really cool, right? So maybe they just want to take advantage of the Game Awards audience and really show everyone the new Zelda they're making. My only thing is I just question if the game is far along enough in development to do so. So I don't know. That's kind of where I rest on that. Next question comes from Thomas Sanders at Dudes32, Dudez32. Here's our first Metroid question. This is a big one. He says, do you think Metroid Prime 4 could succeed in the market today if Metroid Prime Trilogy HD doesn't exist? There's an entire generation of gamers that have never touched Metroid Prime before. They might not be willing to start at Part 4. So that's a great question, Thomas. It's a really good question. It's a very deep question, and it's probably something I could make a whole video on. And in fact, I might actually steal it and make a longer discussion about it on its own video. But if I was going to touch on it for a few minutes here, I think there's a lot of merit to the idea, and it's why, I've said this before, ever since way back when the game was first revealed, Metroid Prime 4 was first revealed, I was talking about bringing the Metroid Prime trilogy to the Switch. I go way, 2 years ago, I was talking about it. And one of the main reasons I thought it made sense at that time, when Metroid Prime 4 was a new announcement, was pretty much for this exact reason. Like, a lot of people would be really excited to play a Metroid game on the Switch because the Switch has reinvigorated gamers' interest in Nintendo as a company and in their products and their games. And so the first huge brand new release in a very famous series, Metroid, to come out on the Switch means not only all the Metroid diehards like myself and a lot of you guys out there are going to play it, but a lot of people who either have finally joined the Nintendo bandwagon or have maybe come back to Nintendo after taking a couple of generations off are going to be really into the idea of playing this brand new, flashy, gorgeous looking Metroid Prime 4. But as you mentioned here, the number 4 is in the title, and it could be intimidating for people to be like, man, I really want to play the new Metroid Prime game, but it's the 4th one, and I don't know anything about the first 3, so maybe I should just pass, you know? And that stuff happens. People do that with games. And so Nintendo would either have to really significantly market and sell this game as something where you don't need to know the prior games, maybe even by removing the number 4 from the title altogether, by the way. Something like that could happen. Or by, obviously, as the question is, release the Metroid Prime trilogy, which we've all talked about, we've all theorized about, we've all heard the rumors and the scuttlebutt behind the scenes and all of this yada yada, and the game has just been nowhere to be seen. And so, yeah, I think it would be really, really great if they did that. But the main part of your question is, could Prime 4 succeed if they don't release the HD trilogy? And honestly, yes, I still think it will succeed. I don't think anything will hold Metroid Prime 4 back from success unless it's just bad. I think the only thing that could hurt its chances at being successful and being, you know, something that keeps the Metroid IP alive would be if it just sucks. If it's just not a good game and it's like, man, people didn't like Other M, people didn't like Federation Force, you know, people did like Samus Returns, but it was a 3DS game. And so if 4 comes out and is no good, people are just going to be like throwing their hands up about Metroid. Like, what do we do? This series isn't good anymore. Nintendo can't do it, so I'm done with it. I would not be that way, and I also don't expect the game to suck, but I just have to state that's the one thing that I think could hurt it. Trilogy, you know, HD trilogy re-release or not, I think too many people are going to be interested in it. I think Nintendo is putting their all into this game. I think the marketing is going to be insane, and as I said before, I think it will be the best looking Nintendo game ever created, whether it releases on the Switch or the next Switch or whatever. It's going to be the best graphics we've ever seen Nintendo create. I personally believe that. And so I just think the game is I just think it's primed for success. Next question comes from Brawls at Real Brawls, and he or she asks me, as unlikely as it is, if Sony decides to take a page out of Microsoft's book and release one of their titles on the Switch, which one do you think it would be, and which one would you personally want? Well, you know, fun question here. Obviously, this is not something that is happening, that is even rumored to be happening. This is obviously just a made-up idea coming from your head, and that's totally fine. This stuff is fun. So, in a world where Sony was going to do this, even though I don't ever expect them to, which one would make the most sense? Gosh, I don't know. I mean, maybe it would be something like, I don't know, bringing back like old franchises like a Jak and Daxter or something that was like developed by Naughty Dog back in the day, or Ratchet and Clank, maybe like bring the Ratchet and Clank remaster from a couple of years ago over. That could be really cool. Is Gravity Rush a Sony? I know it's like exclusive to the PlayStation, right? Or is it also on PC, or is it maybe just multi-platform? And I don't know. I thought Gravity Rush was like, those two games are exclusive. If Gravity Rush is a Sony title, then I would say Gravity Rush. Okay, so I'll throw that in there as a maybe. Which one would I want, though? That is easy, and there's no question. It's Bloodborne. I want Bloodborne on everything possible. To get a Bloodborne on the Nintendo Switch, oh my god. It's my favorite Sony IP. Well, The Last of Us. So The Last of Us is my favorite, followed closely by Bloodborne. Right behind that, obviously, is Uncharted. I love all three of those. You know, Bloodborne 2 has been something that people have wanted and theorized about for a long time. I personally believe it's happening with 100% certainty, 99%. Probably going to maybe launch the PS5 or be announced alongside the PS5, something like that. So that game is going to be coming. Would they ever allow it, though, to move around to, like, the Switch? Doubtful. Because, you know, yes, From Software developed it, but unlike the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, the IP, is owned by Sony. So that's the difference there. Dark Souls is From Software's IP, so they can do whatever they want with it and put it anywhere. But Bloodborne is Sony's. So Sony could even have anyone they want make it. They could have Naughty Dog make Bloodborne 2 if they wanted to. It's obviously going to be From Software. And so anyway, this is getting long in the tooth. The point is, what I would like on the Nintendo Switch is Bloodborne. Next question comes from Traykov540 at Traykov540. What is up, buddy? Thanks for the question. Very active on the channel and stuff. He asks me, with games such as Pokemon getting bombed by hardcore fans, do you think there is a big divide between gamers and game developers? What do you think is the best way to get gamers to understand more about game development? So, pretty loaded question, a very good and timely and relevant question, you know, obviously because of the Pokemon controversy, for example. Is there a big divide between gamers and game developers? I think there's a significant divide. I don't know if I would call it big per se, especially in a world with YouTubers like myself and other people who do review games, you know, like the average person has been able to become like a trusted reviewer in the industry nowadays solely because of like the YouTube like platform. And so a lot of people who are just gamers and not industry people or developers are reviewing games from just the perspective of, hey, I'm just a guy or a girl who likes games and buys and plays them. And so this is what I think about a game. And so I think that that's kind of like blurred the lines a little bit. But I do have to say that, you know, when you look at something like the Pokemon situation and, you know, there was so much controversy, diehard fans, of which I am not, I will remind you guys, I'm not a Pokemon fan. You know, diehard fans already upset about the game before it even released. Reviewers start reviewing the game. They say, hey, this is a good game. When it comes to making a video game, when it comes to making a Pokemon video game, it's good. It's solid. It's an 8. It's an 8.5. Maybe even it's a 9. And so that tells you that from the developer perspective, the game creation perspective, the industry reviewer perspective, it seems like it meets the standards of like a high quality game for that genre of video game. The diehard fans, however, aren't or haven't been willing to see it that way. They've got tunnel vision on what they want and demand, and they already know they're mad at something, and so they can't break out of that vision, that clouded vision of how angry they are. And so they're not able to see past that and maybe just look at like some of the objective realities about how it meets the standards of, you know, what makes a this kind of game work or that kind of game work or whatever. And so that's where I think maybe there's a divide. I think that, yeah, that happens. Like, and also because when you're a developer or an industry reviewer, I think the thing is that you have to be trained to be able to kind of set your emotions and certain desires aside for the sake of trying to be as objective as possible to cover as wide of a group as possible. And when you're just a fan, when you're just a person, just a guy or girl on the internet, even if you've got a YouTube channel, or even if you're just somebody who's just online, forming and sharing your opinions, you are motivated solely by your emotions and solely by your desires and solely by your passion, and you're just one person throwing your opinion out there only. You don't have to consider how other people might view something. It's just you and your opinion and your tweets. That's all it is. And so you can be as crazy and mean and vitriolic and toxic as possible, or you can be as nice as possible. And I'm not calling anyone out for doing either or the other. I'm just, you know, using examples to answer the question here. I'm not saying, Pokemon fans are toxic. I'm not invested enough in that topic to have that opinion. I'm just describing the situation. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question. It's a really interesting time with that kind of stuff obviously happening in movies as well right now, and it just kind of is what it is. I just hope that over the next couple of years, everyone just kind of gets over this hump of being so angry about stuff and being mean about how they're angry. And eventually we all settle into just like knowing how things are and just moving forward peacefully. Probably not going to happen, but I'd like to see it. Next questions. 2 questions actually come from 2 different people who pretty much asked the same thing. So I wanted to just give them both their own shout out because I didn't want to leave anyone out here if I couldn't. So this comes from Matthew at Mafu111 and also Mighty Ryan at Mighty Ryan 1337. And you can see here, essentially, they both ask, what do I think is the most underrated game of the year that I've played, or the biggest sleeper hit of 2019? What's the most underrated game of the year? For me, it's a clear and easy answer. It's Metro Exodus. It's a game I did not expect to fall in love with to the degree that I did. I didn't even know until probably a couple of weeks before it came out that I was going to buy it. But it looked good since the E3 reveal, and then it got closer, and I think there just wasn't a lot of other games out at the time that I was interested in. But I did think it looked cool. I love post-apocalyptic settings. It was very like Fallout-like to me, and I love Fallout. So I was like, well, I'm gonna pick up Metro. Like, it looks cool. Like, I want to see what this post-apocalyptic game is like. And man, I fell in love. I adore that game. I mean, it's got issues and quirks like any video game, so whatever. But I don't know, you guys. If there's one game I could recommend to you that most people didn't play this year, it's absolutely Metro Exodus. It was beautiful. It was fun. There's so many worlds. There's several worlds. There's so many maps and locations you go to. And they're all like so different, and there's so much to do. But then there's also a really cool story and narrative carrying it through. And the ending wasn't like super satisfying, but it got the job done enough. And I just... man, I don't know. I could rave about it. I did not expect to love it that much, and I'm so happy I found a game that was that much of a surprise to me. So that's my answer, Metro Exodus. Next question comes from Rhino Dino at Rhino Dino 64, and he or she asks me, what do you want the most out of the PlayStation 5, and do you think that Sony may get too cocky again with it like how they did with the PlayStation 3? Hopefully not. So I agree. Hopefully they don't get too cocky. And I will just say real quick, I don't expect them to. There's no reason to think they will. I think they learned that lesson, and they will take that lesson with them to their grave. They will not do that again. I mean, if they're gonna come in pricing something really high again like that, it's gonna be so justified that no one will really question it. Other than that, they will constantly try to cut the price, come in cheaper than Microsoft, come in cheaper than competition. They don't ever want to have a $599 US moment ever again, I guarantee you. Even though I know there's rumors, and Michael Pachter said the PS5 is going to be like $800 or whatever. I don't believe that. I hope they don't prove me wrong, but I sure just don't see Sony doing that. So, as far as what I want out of the PlayStation 5, I mean, I'm very excited for it. I'm so excited that new generation hardware is around the corner. It's shocking to me because it feels like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Wii U, like, really just came out a couple of years ago. And here we are, and we're already planning to move on to the next things. I mean, the Switch, of course, is brand new, but still, it's crazy. But I'm very excited. You know, what I want from the PlayStation 5, you know what's tricky? I love Sony and Microsoft, you know, as much as I love Nintendo almost. But I will admit that with Nintendo, I always have more specific demands than I do with Sony or Microsoft. I don't know if it's fair or unfair. It's just how I feel. And so when it comes to the PlayStation 5, I don't really want it to do much of anything special other than, you know, have really cool looking graphics. You know, I'm not a graphics whore, but I like good graphics. And so I'm excited to see the next generation of graphics. So show me really cool graphics, and honestly, just have great games. Give me, you know, I'm excited for The Last of Us 2, which is going to be PS4. So maybe make The Last of Us 3. You know, let's see Ghost of Tsushima. You know, maybe a new spin-off in the Uncharted world that relates to the ending of Uncharted 4 that I won't spoil. Give me that Bloodborne 2. Give me a new IP the way they tried with The Order 1886. Give me a new Resident Evil game. I just want great games. I want next-gen visuals. You know, and I want it to be a smooth running system. I want it to be a nice UI, nothing crazy. I like the simplicity of the Switch's UI. And I will admit that the discussion about like the whole haptic feedback with the controller, I'm actually really excited for that, you guys. So if it works the way it sounds like it's going to do for Sony what HD Rumble has failed to do for Nintendo, because I love the idea of HD Rumble. I want more games to use it well. I think Nintendo has dropped the ball. Sony sounds like they're describing something very similar. And like, if they can do it right and your controller feels different based on the terrain you're walking on, or you can feel the tension of pulling a bow back or firing a gun in like a more like real way, I don't know. I think that sounds really cool. And so I just want that to be delivered upon and to actually be quality. So that's it. Just give me great games and a cool controller. Okay, next question comes from Jonathan M. at CreativeJohn82. What's up, Jonathan? He asks me, pipe dream question, with EA seeing the success of a single-player Star Wars game with no microtransactions in Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn, do you think there's a chance of Rogue Squadron being revived? Pretty big jump you made there, but I get the nature of the question. I like the question. Jedi Fallen Order was amazing, by the way. Oh my freaking god, that game is so good, but I'm a big Star Wars nerd. Do I think that this opens up the doors for Rogue Squadron? I mean, I feel like if there is any sort of behind-the-scenes chance at a Rogue Squadron game, I think that those doors have either already been open or they've already been closed. I don't know that I see Jedi Fallen Order necessarily changing that situation. But what I will say is that I do kind of believe that the doors might be open for Rogue Squadron behind the scenes, and they might have been open for a while. I think that when EA really started to have the gaming community and the Star Wars community come down on them over the past couple of years, I think they've started to realize, okay, let's start doing a bunch of good faith business moves, okay? Let's heal the Star Wars video game divide by doing the right things. The first step was they removed the microtransaction stuff from Battlefront 2. They committed to free DLC, and they've stuck with that for the past 2 years. They've released a ton of DLC for the game, you guys. They haven't charged one time for it. They brought back the ability to buy crystals online with your money, which is just what unlocks, like, skins for your characters, and that's it. There's no actual gameplay advantage to it. But honestly, I don't even think that there's access to that. I tried looking for it once just to kind of see if there were microtransactions in the game, and it said that there was a store, but I tried accessing it to see what kind of stuff it was selling people, and it was like, there was no store. So I don't know, maybe they don't even have that. Maybe I'm even wrong on that. I've never bought anything. I just bought the game and I just play the game. So they started by fixing Battlefront 2, and then of course they released Jedi Fallen Order, which is everything we want it to be, and they have succeeded admirably in that, and Respawn and EA deserve credit for that. And so what would be something else to do? It's, you do things like you bring back KOTOR 3, or you make KOTOR 3, I should say. You bring back Rogue Squadron, you make a new one of those, you make a remaster, HD remaster, you do those kinds of things. You make new story-based single-player games, you do stuff like that. And so I feel like Rogue Squadron fits within that bubble of stuff that EA probably knows they could do something with. Factor 5 is no more, but we do know that they were working on stuff and that stuff is out there. And since EA owns the rights to it, and Lucasfilm, the company, would obviously still have all that stuff, why couldn't they just work together to bring back the franchise? Like, I don't see it as super likely, but do I see it as possible? Yes, I do. Okay, and the last question for today is actually a twofer. I normally don't do this, but this comes from the same person, Jonathan M, Creative John 82. I'm going to allow him to ask 2 questions in a row because I liked both of them. And this one, of course, has to do with Metroid again. So here's what Jonathan asks me about Metroid. He says, with Prime 4 being delayed, do you think Nintendo would remake Federation Force for the Switch? Maybe to also use it to sell Nintendo Online subscriptions. Oh, Federation Force. What a weird, wacky little dealio situation that is. I've talked about it. If you've been following me for a while, you remember when that game came out. I played the game. I bought the game. I liked the game. It was actually pretty good. It's not the Metroid game we wanted. It's not the Metroid game I wanted. That came out before we knew Prime 4 and Samus Returns were a game. And so it was like, what the hell is this, Nintendo? Give us a real Metroid game. And they eventually did, but for that year, we thought all we had was Federation Force. And it's not the Metroid game we wanted. But, as I've said, it stands on its own merits as a pretty good, fun game with a unique, cool idea that looked, sounded, and played extremely well. And so I will say that I think there is life still in the idea of what Federation Force was, that multiplayer mode, and in the Metroid universe, in the first person, and you're solving puzzles together. I don't care about the blast ball soccer thing. That can eat a Metroid face. I just don't care about that. But the actual game, the Federation Force stuff, is cool. And I've discussed before how, maybe they do something like that for a multiplayer mode in Prime 4. I think that would be great, as long as it doesn't, compromise the integrity of the actual single-player campaign for Prime 4. I'm all about them trying something like that. But would they remake the 3DS game, per your question? Just no. I don't think so. I'm not saying I would hate them doing it. I would welcome it, but they're not going to. And I don't think that they would use it to sell online subscriptions the way you say. The only way they would use that to sell online subscriptions would be if they did make a Federation Force mode for Prime 4 that was really deep and involved. Maybe they wouldn't call it Federation Force mode. And they sold the fact that Metroid Prime 4 will have this amazing multiplayer mode that every Metroid fan will want to play. And so everyone who picks up Metroid Prime 4 will want to make sure they have an online subscription. But as far as just a separate Federation Force game, even if it was a downloadable only kind of thing, you know, to just revive that name and to try to sell online subscriptions using that gameplay style, I don't see it. Unfortunately, you know, like I said, it's not a worthless idea, but I just don't see it being strong enough. I think Nintendo knows it was way too toxic. They got so much crap from people. You guys go back 4 years or 3 years, whenever that was. Like, it was 4 years, 2015 E3. Go look at that first trailer. The dislikes and the comments are insane. So it's a very touchy thing for them to approach, so I think they do have to do it sneakily, okay? They're not going to make a Federation Force game or remake. They're going to make a mode just like it and put it in Metroid Prime 4 and call it something different. Even if it plays the same, they're going to probably shy away from the Federation Force concept and name and brand. That's my theory and opinion. I could be wrong, but I feel really good about it. So yeah, that's what I think about Federation Force on the Switch. And so that is it for today's Q&A. Thank you guys so much for asking so many great questions. It's always hard to leave a bunch of questions out, but that's just the nature of the beast. I can only get to so many. This thing is already going to be like 45 minutes, and I don't want to make it like an hour and a half unless I was doing like a live stream or whatnot. So that's it. So many great questions, you know, good Metroid stuff, some Pokemon stuff, some Game Awards stuff. You know, the end of the year is upon us. It's a crazy time. So just a reminder, if you want to be a part of these Q&As and conversations in the future, please follow me on Twitter. It's a great way to be in contact with me. And with that being said, I hope you guys had fun. Leave your comments and discussions about my answers below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.